Hello out there. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with someone I first spoke with a couple of years ago now, a man who's a valuable asset to our nation, the humble but mighty Carl Bromley, who joins me now all the way from Christchurch. Hi, Carl. It's lovely to have
G'day,
you here.
Sam.
Beautiful day up here, Carl. How's it down there in the sub-Antarctic?
It's pretty warm. It's overcast, but it's not too bad. I'm sort of been sitting in my office all day, so look overcast out the window.
Yes, I hear you on that one. Stuck in front of a computer. I know the feeling. I must admit, I'm starting to wonder actually if we're going to be allowed to enjoy this summer, what with all the reports of COVID soup and more variants and numbers growing faster than ever. You know, all the same kind of lying vernacular that we heard leading up to the last couple of lockdowns. Have you heard similar things, Carl?
Yeah, I've been catching wind of it. I mean, they say the best cure for the COVID pandemic is not watching the news or listening to the radio. It certainly seems to
Yeah.
hold true. But what I've heard, it's just kind of like a little nagging, annoying noise in my ear about this. And I mean, they haven't let go of the narrative, have they? They've continued to
No.
talk about different variants, blah blah blah. I heard the COVID soup thing. Well, what kind of booster or jab would cover all the agents or particular variants in a soup? It doesn't even make sense or logical sense whatever.
I'm
It's
sure they've got
whatever.
one they prepared earlier that just happens to be sitting in the top drawer, you know, ready to go. 100% safe and effective soup vaccine.
There's no shotgun antibiotics available on the market for any virus. So what makes them think that we're going to
Oh,
accept the
insane.
the ludicrousy of thinking there's some kind of shotgun jab that's going to somehow cover a soup of variants? It's just nonsense. But unfortunately, most of the New Zealand public still just drinks down the cordial, so to speak, and accepts anything the
Yeah.
government would say.
Well,
So it
that's
is
right.
concerning. It's concerning to hear this ramping up. But yeah,
Mm.
let's see what happens. Hopefully, it's just a
Mm.
annoying, buzzing noise in our ear that will go away by
Mm.
Christmas. Who knows?
Yeah. I do think they'll have to ramp things up at some stage, though, so that Luxon will be able to carry out his promises to go even harder with his mandating, you know. But who knows? Anyway, we're not here to talk about that, are we, Carl? We're here to talk about an endeavour, a labour of love and conviction to establish an effective coalition party, the Independent Coalition Party, or TIC for short, which is a big
So,
improvement on the acronym associated with our last coalition party, being FARC, of course.
true.
True. I don't know if they thought that
Well,
one
the
through.
Electoral Commission may not let it pass, possibly,
Mm.
because I do use acronyms on purpose, and obviously TIC means tick,
Mm-hmm.
tick for the Independent Coalition. So they may not let that pass yet. In fact, I'm finding the Electoral Commission not that straightforward to deal with at the moment. So
Right.
let's see how go, how they go on this. Hopefully, they will sharpen their game and actually deal forthrightly and with honour in terms of the inquiries I've been making and to help this party get registered if it does get enough numbers to be registered.
Right. Yeah. Here's hoping. Well, I got to say, I think you're a brave man to go back for more after your valiant run for Mayor of Christchurch. They did everything they could do to discourage you from ever coming back, you know, slandered you, maligned your character, totally misrepresented you over and over. They didn't want your voice heard, did they? And for good reason, because you would have revealed a thing or two, and it wouldn't have been good for them or their agenda, and they darn well knew it. But you are back, and this time we're talking about a much wider area than Christchurch. What is the Independent Coalition, Carl? Can you please give us a brief introduction or outline of what it is, and then we'll go into it in a little bit more detail later on. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing, Sam. And the Independent Coalition is really the phase two of a two-phase plan that I had in mind and was working before the local elections. So I've been talking about the Independent Coalition for over a year now on my YouTube channel, which is called Fonza. There's a playlist there. But the plan was always to launch phase one, which would be acting locally and doing the local campaign, and then go into phase two, acting nationally for the general election. So this is just really me just plodding along with my plan and implementing that, having done the local election, build up some community of about 3,000 votes here in Christchurch, now launching phase two. And so the Independent Coalition is basically a model that I came up with about a year ago now, having thought about the issues that derail and sabotage genuine democracy, freedom, and sovereignty-loving Kiwis from forming coalitions. So I witnessed that during the last elections, the inability of minor party Conservatives to form a coalition. And so I came up with two answers to that, and that was the two issues are conflict around leadership and a plethora of policies. These two things usually shoot coalitions in the water before they get off the ground. So the independent coalition model is an answer to that, to eliminate conflict around leadership and to eliminate the barrier of a plethora of policies so that minor parties and independent candidates can join this component party in a massive party vote to get across that 5% line, which will win about 6 MPs, Conservative MPs, to get a sovereign, democratic, freedom-loving influence back into our government.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Carl. Now, as you know, I'm one of those people, like many who are probably watching this, I would imagine, who don't have a whole lot of faith in politics, within this new climate especially. And so I've been one of those who've had a tendency to not want to get involved and just kind of like wash my hands of it in a sense, because it's just so darn corrupt. But when we talked on the phone the other day, I must say you had some really good points, and I was able to see it from a different angle. You talked about how it was primarily about sort of lifting up a standard, you know, being a voice in the wilderness in a sense, and doing all that you can do to be able to face the next generation and God, more importantly, and be able to say that you had done all that you could do. Would you say that's roughly an accurate description for your motivation in this?
Well, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, God has given us this amazing, beautiful country to live in, and it's been a nation that hasn't always had this degree of corrupt governance. I mean, if someone steals your car and misuses it and speeds in it and drives recklessly in it, is it really the fault of your car, or is it the fault of the person who's stolen it? And I see the government a bit like that. There's no perfect governance. There's no perfect form of governance. But in the past, we have had a nation that has done very well, been the envy of the nations of the world, and unfortunately, it's been stolen. It's been hijacked. It's been used recklessly. It's been used dishonestly and corruptly, and we need to take that back. So I believe we need to work within what we have left of the structure we have. And yes, it's to raise a standard. And the reason why I'm continuing on putting myself forward and put myself in the firing line for defamation, slander, and abuse is not for gigs, but because I'm a patriot New Zealander, and I love this country, and I love our people, and God gave it to us. And even His word says that we have a right to fight for our sons, our daughters, our wives, our spouse, and our houses, our material possessions, Nehemiah says. So I want to be found doing everything I could do, and at the end of the next elections, I want to know in my heart with good conscience that I've done everything I could possibly do to raise that standard, to invite Kiwis to humbly come together and focus on freedom, democracy, and sovereignty to really get some patriot New Zealand voices back into our government so we can win back our traditional New Zealand.
Yes, absolutely. I know myself, I'd much prefer to just kick back and, you know, forget about all this and just enjoy life. And like you said, sticking out your neck in this way isn't going to win you any popularity. It's actually pretty hazardous socially.
The Midnight Oil song says, "How can we sleep when our beds are burning?"
Exactly. I can't sleep. I know. I so get that. That's how I feel. It's urgent. Yeah, it's too important. And I see that dedication and fire burns in you. So thanks for explaining that, Carl. Now, one thing I really do like about the Independent Coalition is that you yourself have an understanding and knowledge and are not afraid to speak about the global situation and the truth behind this totalitarian shift. You know, you have understanding into the motivations and intentions of the globalist puppeteers, you know, groups like WEF and the UN, WHO, Bilderberg, and especially that lowlier, the Vatican and Pope, who are pulling way more strings than we may think, as we can see if we look into COP27 and the climate agenda, etc. But yeah, this understanding is a pretty vital element to being able to truly shine a light on and effectively combat our current political situation. Wouldn't you say, Carl?
Yeah, I think in real simple terms, anytime we see our rights as New Zealanders being violated and usurped for global interests, we should be upset and concerned. and be standing up and fighting for that. So even if people don't have in-depth knowledge of these greater issues, anyone ought to be able to see that their basic human rights as Kiwis is being absolutely violated and usurped. One good example is the basic tenet of the Bill of Rights that says you have a right to refuse medical treatment. And lo and behold, we have this legislation going through that is going to fluoridate our water nationally. That is a medical treatment. Fluoridization is a medical treatment. And so straight away, any person with their eyes open can see and should be concerned that that is a basic fundamental violation of one right of many that have been violated and taken out from under us as New Zealanders.
Yeah, there's definitely a sinister purpose to that one. You're right. It's no wonder we have controlled opposition voices like Sean Plonker, constantly calling truth speakers fluoride deniers. He's just putting it out there that anyone that has an issue with forced fluoridation is a crazy conspiracy theorist, when you're darn right, it's a medical treatment and we should be able to decline.
It sure is. It's supposed to be for children. I mean, if you want to have fluoride for your kids, just be an adult parent and organise it yourself. Don't expect the rest of the population to be in, just drinking down a chemical they don't want to be drinking in their water for the sake of kids. Yes, we love kids, but that's a parental decision, and I just think it's a complete cover up for a nefarious agenda. Either way, it's a violation of our human rights.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And my mind goes to the Five Waters issue when you're talking about this, which was Three Waters, of course, as if that wasn't bad enough. But now Five Waters, all the way to 70 kilometres offshore, for goodness sake. All water is going to be under control of the globalists. This is not about, if you're a Māori and you're thinking this is going to put money in your pockets, no, this is a deal with the rich and powerful kupapa iwi, and you can bet your bottom dollar there'll be heavy conditions about what happens to that water, and you can be sure it's not going to be good.
That's right.
Yeah. It's criminal because even a dog can drink rainwater out of a puddle, but we won't even be allowed to drink rainwater soon. What it all comes down to, though, is that our nation is in a dire situation. We're in a bad place. As you preface so well in your party document, your draft document that outlines your values and intentions, in a section titled The State of Our Nation Now. Do you mind if I read a little bit of that out now, Carl?
Yeah, sure thing.
Thanks. It's titled The State of Our Nation Now. Our sovereignty has been sold to globalists. Our democracy has been deconstructed to form totalitarianism. Our freedoms have been decimated. We're no longer being represented. We're being dictated to. We've been lied to by omission and propaganda. We've been terrorised with fear. We've been overwhelmed with confusion. We've been gagged by extreme censorship. We've been divided by medical, racial and moral apartheid. We've been treated like children and taken for fools. We've been robbed. 3 Waters, now 5 Waters, SNA, the land grab. We've been abused. Our Bill of Rights violated. We've been experimented on under extreme coercion. I personally don't think it was an experiment. I think they know exactly what they're doing. But don't mind me. Apparently I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist that way. We've been pitted against each other, Kiwi against Kiwi, with the incitement of hate, judgment, fear, guilt and shame. We've been cheated out of the best doctors, teachers, nurses and many other professions through mandating. Our economy's been decimated, our businesses destroyed. We've been lied about, defamed and slandered as evil, dangerous and scoffed at, ridiculed and mocked for wanting truth, answers and our rights and freedoms. Our New Zealand, our nation has been violated to the near point of destruction on our watch. The patriots have been divided. So, I think that describes very well where our nation's at. Anyway, would you mind telling us a little bit more about the Independent Coalition? It is clear that uniting all the minor parties into a party bus would give our fight for sovereignty and freedom and our Bill of Rights a far more effective vehicle than individually. But what else can you tell us about the Independent Coalition?
Yeah, well, one of the things about it is that I want people to understand that I'm not a politician. I never want to be a politician. I'm not going to be a politician. I'm a Kiwi who believes in influence and leadership, and I'm going into the political domain, but God forbid that I ever be quantified or reflect the persona of a politician. That's not what I am, not what I want to be. The second thing is I get a lot of criticism from people who want to see the system, so the system's had it, the system ends, get rid of the Crown, blah, blah, blah. And I had some of that yesterday. And it's very judgmental. It's a very ignorant position that people come from in terms of lambasting me. And it's sad to see people from the so-called freedom movement destroying and putting the boot into their own people. I'm working with what we have and what we've got in a particular way, and I celebrate and cheerlead anyone else who's going about things their own way. It takes many different approaches to slay this beast. And so I like to encourage people not to be so judgmental and discouraging of others who are trying to do what they can to sacrifice to win the soul of our nation. So I'm not a politician. Yes, I am working with the relics or the leftovers of what we have. But the Independent Coalition is really about forming critical mass, raising community again, building networks of people, and inviting minor parties and independent candidates to come together on three policies. Basically, three policies: freedom, democracy, and sovereignty, and into a structure, a unique umbrella party structure that eliminates the issue of leadership conflict, because actually in this party, the leadership is facilitative and rotational. The leadership is basically just a cameo spokesperson role that gets passed around, has no authoritative power. All it does is says that we have united on these three policies, even though we may disagree on many, many other ones. These are the three that bind us, in the hope that should we get candidates into this government of influence who believe in sovereignty, democracy, and freedom for our nation, it will start turning the trajectory of this ship in the right direction to get back our traditional free, happy, thriving New Zealand nation once again.
Yes. Thanks, Carl. What did you just call it? A facilitative rotational leadership? Could you explain that in a little bit more depth, please?
Facilitative rotational leadership. So that just basically means you do need an appointed leader of a party. I was told by the Electoral Commission that wasn't necessary. You only need a secretary. But reading through the Electoral Act this last week, certain activities require that. But the leadership is just passed on. So someone may have that role for 3 months. Someone else can have a term for 3 months. There's no authoritative control or dictatorship in that. It's just the role is a cameo role that basically says, I'm a spokesperson. If you want to ask the minor parties about their specific policies, talk to them. If you want to ask an individual electoral candidate about their policies as independent, talk to them. My role as a leader for this portion of time is just to say we've united on sovereignty and freedom and democracy, and that's it. So it gets rid of this ego conflict and struggle that has sabotaged coalitions coming together in the past, because everyone's debating about who's going to be, who wants to be there. The coalition is actually a party of leaders for leaders. So minor parties retain their own leadership. Independent candidates retain their own leadership. So no leadership is lost for any party or for any independent candidate. So that's one of the uniquenesses of this model that's missed by a lot of the other so-called minor party coalitions that have been bandied around or trying to get off the ground at the moment.
Right. And this is an important difference. Not only does it empower its constituents, but at the same time it effectively protects it from the danger of becoming an arena for anyone to use for their own personal elevation, or to point people towards one person as the hero and demand submission to them. And you won't need one person's permission to speak, and so it won't muffle the truth. And it certainly won't be lining any one person's pockets from that description.
It's a very adult approach, a very adult, I'm okay, you're okay approach. And it's a very pure approach of a pure intent. And that's just to get sovereign, democratic, freedom-loving influence back into our government. No hidden agenda, no ulterior motive. That's the agenda, pure and simple, overt and out front and up front.
Right. Thanks, Cal. Now, as I'm sure you're very much aware, there is no one in our parliament or media speaking up in New Zealand. Australia has guys like Senator Rennick, Senator Antic, Malcolm Roberts, Pauline Hanson, and many other MPs. And there are many other politicians internationally, like the wonderful Christine Anderson from the EU Parliament. Actually, I'm just going to play a little clip of her because she's such a great example of what a politician should be and can be if they so desire. If that's okay?
Yeah. the people have been lied to. It was a gigantic lie, and on this lie, everything that governments, especially in the Western democracies, did to infringe on people's rights, to take away their freedom, to lock them in their homes, imposing curfews, all of this was based on that gigantic lie. Ursula von der Leyen, EU Commission President, is now under a lot of pressure, and rightly so. The people have a right to know what went on in these contracts with her exchange of SMS with CEO Pfizer Bourla. The people need to know who they can hold responsible and accountable for whatever may have gone on behind the scenes. And you know what? One more thing, though. I am sick and tired of being called a COVIDiot. And I much rather be a COVIDiot than being a gov-idiot. Because that's what all these people blindly trust. Because that's what all these people that blindly trusted their governments turned out to be. And I will say it again, it was never, ever about public health. It was never about breaking any waves. It was always about breaking people. But, and that's the good news, they failed. It didn't work. And that I am very proud of, and I'm proud of the people that I am so honored to be allowed to represent, and I will continue to do just that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, she's great. That's what we need. People like Christine up on the rooftops declaring the truth, exposing the lies. But here in New Zealand, there's no politician doing that. No one defending the vulnerable in this way. There's no backbone within the New Zealand Parliament or media. Heck, there's barely even a vertebra, let alone a backbone. Honestly, I think if we glued them all together, we still wouldn't get one full backbone. You know, it's the truth of it. We've had a few timidly, shuffle around a little bit of truth, but when it matters, they step back again, unwilling to put the truth and integrity before their own personal, political, or professional preservation.
That's right.
The truth is and will always be our most powerful weapon, and people like Christine Anderson aren't afraid to use it. But here in New Zealand, no one's prepared to get their teeth into it. They don't really expose the dangerous truth like it needs to be, the way we need our politicians to do right now. We need people with serious courage and fortitude, ones who are willing to do the research and gain the knowledge to actually be able to call out the truth, name names, expose, inform the public. So I'm going to ask you straight, Carl, will you call out the lies? Would you encourage the other candidates within the independent coalition to truly call them out too?
Well, absolutely. I'll be standing as an independent candidate myself, and I'll certainly be calling out the truth and saying it like it is, because I'm not a politician and I engage in political games. And a lot of these people who I believe that we have who are standing up and making an effort or professing to make an effort for our nation, a lot of them are still obviously politicians, and so they are tiptoeing around the tulips a little bit. In terms of the independent coalition, it'll be up to the minor parties themselves involved and the individual independent candidates to determine how much they're going to speak up and speak out. But as a party, the independent coalition says quite clearly that we are for democracy. That's elected representation and local national government, sovereignty, independent, self-sufficient New Zealand that unapologetically puts New Zealanders and New Zealand interests first, and freedom, the enshrining of the Bill of Rights, and the recognition of the principle of the Nuremberg Code in our nation. So that's what the party will be standing for. But in terms of the individual candidates and the minor parties, they're going to have to determine the voice they speak with and how loud that's going to be. But for me, I'm not a politician, and I'm going to speak it like it is and tell it like it is, call out the corruption, speak the truth, and demand that we get our traditional New Zealand back. that our government, that our influence and our leadership that administrates our country represents New Zealanders first, democratically, and they're primarily only to administer the will of the people. That's what government should be in a democracy.
That's what the word politician actually means, doesn't it? A person who is for the affairs of the city or the group of people. That's the definition. So maybe you can take us back to what a politician is supposed to be, Carl.
Well, the terms have been so muddied and hijacked and disgustingly ruined. I was going through something today as preparing a PowerPoint for the party, and it reminds me of how many good words like diversity and transparency and other good words, kindness, and these good words have been absolutely defiled by the left. And it's even hard to use some of these words anymore. And I'll dare say it, the nickname Aotearoa even. It breathes, fear and judgment and indignation in the freedom movements, even if you dare ever use a word. So lots of good words that used to be very innocuous and we would use with dignity and respect have been absolutely violated to the point that even our rhetoric that we have available to us has been stained by the left. So, politician, that means represent the people. It's great. I don't know when we'll be able to return to a time when that word will actually mean what it's supposed to mean and can be used that way. So at the moment, I try to avoid it like the plague because of the meaning it's become associated with today. But, yep, a lot of clawing back to do. Yeah.
That's their game, though, isn't it? To redefine, misrepresent, defile, and ultimately destroy a thing.
The kind of when you think about it, they're really kind of what's the word? Disarming us, disarming our language, even because we become afraid to use these words ourselves because what they've turned them into. Then what other language do you have to use once they've defiled something?
Yeah.
Bit of a rabbit hole here, but bit of a,
it is,
chasing a rabbit, not a rabbit.
And I tend to be drawn into rabbit holes quite easily, it seems. So I'm just going to back away before it sucks me in good and proper. Anyway, Carl, as many people may know, because I haven't exactly been shy about it, I believe the previous Independent Freedom Coalition party that we were offered, the umbrella party run by Freedom and Rights Coalition with Brian Tamaki at the helm, is a deeply flawed and highly dangerous option for many reasons, which I won't go into here. Sure. But suffice to say, when Brian Tamaki proudly posted on his Facebook page that Luxon has said he might consider working with him, and then the leader of the only other party signed up to his umbrella coalition, Michael Jacome, leader of the New Nation Party, commented in response to Brian's post saying, "Oh, how exciting, I would love to work with Luxon." That didn't sit too well with me, I've got to say. For you, Carl, is this about getting Labour out at any cost, even if it means aligning with Luxon and National? Would you work with National if they asked you to, just to ensure that Jacinda was ousted?
Look, I mean, that's absolutely sounds abhorrent to me. At the end of the day, what we want is our sovereign, democratic and free New Zealand back. Now, if any particular party said we will enshrine the New Zealand Bill of Rights and make that into legislation that's untouchable without a 75% binding referenda, would you not work with any people that would do that? So it's kind of a double-edged sword in a way in terms of me answering that, because if any group or party would enshrine the New Zealand Bill of Rights as it stands and the principle of the Nuremberg Code, and actually we could see that done, then it would be, I think it would be a really, would you not do that? As far as Luxon and National and Labour are concerned, the two wings on the same bird. I don't trust any of them. They're serving globalist interests, but it's a one day at a time. Look at the lay of the land approach, but there's no way that I would go into any coalition agreement with National or Labour, any of them, who serve globalist interests and continue down a trajectory of smashing our democracy, freedom and sovereignty. But I would walk over broken glass and call over burning coals to get our sovereignty and democracy and freedom back. So I probably haven't explained that straightforward because I don't know if there's a straightforward answer for that. And that in one way there is no, but another way there isn't yes, depending on what's at stake and what's on offer and how certain that is. If you can do something without selling your soul out. So yeah, that's a really interesting question, really.
Yeah, I see your point. But you do believe that Luxon is...
No way.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, Carl, if anyone wants to support this endeavour, but they're not a politician and perhaps don't wish to be, is there any way that they can support this other than with their vote?
Absolutely. So regardless of, people want to, call themselves politicians, well, that's fine. But if they're freedom-loving, sovereign-loving, democratic-loving people that are committed to that passionately and they're going to want to fight for that, then they can become, any person, any electorate can stand up and become a local candidate in your electorate. And if you join an umbrella party like the Independent Coalition as a independent, you can amass and attract party vote. So potentially we've got, I think, 67 seats in New Zealand, but you can even run candidates against each other in the same seat within an umbrella party. So there's an untapped amount of independents we could have all amassing vote. So if you're one of those people, you don't have to be a politician, you don't have to have any special skills or abilities, you just need to love your nation and love democracy, freedom and sovereignty. You can become a candidate, independent candidate, join, or if you're in a minor party, you can also join as well, knowing that you're not going to lose your leadership, you're not going to lose your policy. So anyone who is passionate about winning back our traditional New Zealand can be involved. And of course, if you want to get involved in other ways, if you have administrative skills, finance skills, law skills, if you don't mind doing donkey work and setting things up and taking things down, flyers, webs, we need all kinds of help. So if you're interested in any way you want to help, you can be in touch with me, Carl Bromley at gmail.com, or call me. That'll be fantastic. So I'm going to be on the road shortly next week, going through the North Island and having informal coffee meetings with people who want to know more about the Independent Coalition, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that. And if there's enough interest, enough traction and resources, then next year I'll be back on the road and doing more organised public meetings throughout the whole nation to see if we can get this thing registered and the right people on board to get it done.
Right. Okay. So if anyone's watching this and their heart is in it, you'll find a way to use them. There's a role for everyone? Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. And let me just say to anyone who is listening who might be thinking, I'd quite like to run as a political candidate, but I couldn't do that. I don't have what it takes. But I hope other people do. Well, maybe you should back yourself, because it's not until we actually stand up, because it's a do or die situation, that we see what we're really made of sometimes. So anyway, Carl, is there anywhere people can go to for direction with this, websites, YouTube channels, or anything, if they do want to get involved?
Yep. The best website is the website fonza.com, stands for Our Nation New Zealand Aotearoa.com. That's up and running, and there's a join up button there. You can join up and be in touch. There's contact information to get in touch with me. And there's also a possibility, if you're in a position to make a donation to support the campaign, you can. But fonza.com would be a great place to go. I'll be posting more up on there regarding videos and an events calendar as well for meetings coming up as well. So Fonza, FONNZA.com.
Great, thank you. And is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up here, Carl?
Not off the top of my head, other than this. How concerned are people about this nation of New Zealand? And are you willing to sacrifice 1 year of your life to prioritise this fight to save your nation indefinitely? Because I don't know about the people listening here, Sam, but by the end of the next election, I want to come out the other side knowing that I've done everything I could possibly, practically, peacefully do to save this nation. And for our listeners out there, I want to ask them if they're willing to do just that as well, because there's no point going to the next year, moaning, complaining, griping, and getting to the end of it and losing our rights and having the tight squeeze of totalitarianism back around our neck and then complaining and blaming others when people have an opportunity to do something and chose to do nothing. So I want to encourage the listeners out there, please do something. This is important, it's critical, it's 11th hour. Don't be fooled by the false sense of security just with some things backing off because it's election year coming up. So get stuck in, do something. You will make a difference, and we all need to get stuck in if we're really going to make this work for our New Zealand.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Carl. It's been wonderful to talk with you. And before we go, let me say thank you for putting yourself out there in this way, because I know it's not very pleasant out there. And you're doing this for people you don't even know. So thank you, Carl. And may I say you're a very special soul, and you're treasured and appreciated by so many people.
Thank you, Sam, and thanks for listening out there too. Appreciate it. Thanks for your great work.
No worries. Thanks, Carl.
See ya.
Okay, see ya.